2.
And we are back in session. I would like to offer my fellow board members the opportunity to recognize staff, students, or community members. But before we move further, please join me in welcoming Dr. Holly McKnight and her introduction to teaching professions students from Eastern Florida State College. Please stand up so we can recognize you and meet some of our future educators. We can't thank you all enough for being here with us tonight, and more importantly, for the profession that you are going into. We've had significant conversation lately about the importance of your future to our students, so we very much appreciate you, and anything we can do to support you along the way, let us know. All right, board members, recognition. Mr. Craig.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Wait, you got it on? No, now it's on. Thank you, Misty. Real quick, first of all, we had a couple of great board retreats this last couple of weeks, and I just want to thank Pam and Tammy for their work on that, putting all that stuff together and all the administrative stuff. It made it great, so thank you. I know Tammy's not here, but thank you very much, Pam. That was awesome. I think we will all agree, we were all there. The ABC Awards were phenomenal. Teacher of the Year, Employee of the Year, recognizing the Principal of the Year, and the AP of the Year was just a great experience. A lot of fun, well attended, and people were seeming to having a really good time, so that was cool. So thank you to the Brevard Schools Foundation, all the business partners that helped put that on. A couple of us got to attend the Israel Space Day at Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School a few weeks ago. Dr. Scott McCord is the IB science teacher there in chemistry. He has done a couple of trips over to Israel where he spent some time writing their their textbook, their science textbook, and assisted with that quite a bit. Really cool to see I think about 30 Israeli high school students come over and lash up with our Cocoa Beach IB students and follow them around, do an experiment. We got to see a pretty cool experiment in Dr. McCord's classroom, so I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I thank Dr. McCord for leading that. Something that our kids just don't, kind of take for granted living on the Space Coast, and being able to share that experience with people from another country is outstanding. And the last thing is the Cambridge Art Show. I've been mentioning Cambridge a lot lately. They are just a fantastic elementary school over in Cocoa. Their second-year art teacher, Amanda Shaw, put together and came up with an idea based on the district art show that we have here in the ESF, a similar concept for her students at Cambridge, and appropriately put it on the night of parent-teacher conference night. So we could draw more parents into it and draw more community activity in the school. She invited the Cocoa High Strings group to play, so they were there playing some great music in the background. Cocoa High Culinary came and cooked and fed everybody that came and joined it. It was just an amazing community experience in that school, and so I just want to say thank you to Amanda Shaw and for her work on that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Ms. Deskovich.
I overlap on some of John's, but just to add to the ABC Awards, besides the people that won the awards, that was my first time I had ever been, and it's produced pretty much all by the children, the food with all the culinary art students. The food was amazing, the entertainment, the students throughout the whole building that played different instruments and in different bands, and so what a first-class event that was, and so Ms. Kershaw, her department, and everyone that contributed, I was highly impressed. At the Melbourne Mall, I think, continuing right now, I know over the past week there has been the art show, which anybody that is strolling through there can appreciate the art that our students have produced, and once again, blown away by the talent we have within our district. And then the 2 science fairs that have gone on the last 2 weekends. We are sending quite a few students to international competitions. I think that speaks well for our district. And I visited some of the science research classrooms over the last few weeks, and those students are engaged, and our science research teachers are some of the most dedicated. I know they're working long, long hours during fair week, some of them well into the night and wee hours of the morning, as are the students. I especially want to give a shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Scott at Satellite High for the number of students over the last 18 years that they have brought to state finals and to internationals. They're really an amazing team over there. So there's just so much going on, so much to be thankful for.
Very good, thank you.
There we
Mr.
go.
Susan.
First off, I want to say thank you to all my dates for Valentine's Day. Thanks for coming out. My wife's home with our 8-month-old son, and I couldn't think of a better place besides being with them, but with all of you guys. Next thing is I want to say thank you to Arby Creech. We've had a lot of little issues, and he's really been working through them and been great, actually to the point where he's pulling out Google Maps and actually setting up distances and everything else for our constituents to understand our bus routes and everything else. I want to say thanks to the Brevard Zoo for having our beginning teachers throughout the entire district out there for one of the in-service days and all the programs that they do. If anybody hasn't gone out to Brevard Zoo to see all the things that they do interactively with our students and everything else, it's an amazing program. I also want to say congratulations to all of our football programs. If anybody was paying attention to National Signing Day, but across our district, we're sending kids as Brevard County representatives, as athletes to the entire district, to the entire country. That was amazing. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Johnson for bringing me to the all-county band and music orchestra and everything else. That was a phenomenal night. We sat there while the best and brightest inside our entire county were playing music of all kinds, and then also bringing in some of the best individuals to orchestrate those things. And then I just wanted to say thank you to the whole board for what you guys have been doing. I will tell you, between all the board workshops and the collaboration and things that are going on, there's some really good things coming. And I'm just really excited, so thank you. Oh, one more thing. O'Galley High School had a car show, and I want to tell you guys, this was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in my life when it comes to trades. We have an amazing trades program here in this county. These kids were dressed up. They had car shows of all kinds. They were dressed up with their T-shirts that they had all made, and it looked like we literally went back to the 1950s. They raised money for their program, and not only that, but it gave a place for those kids that are a part of that program to be a part of that school. Sometimes when we don't have those programs as a part of schools, those kids get left behind. And I want to say thank you to O'Galley, thank you to Jeremy Solomon, who put that together also and gave his school up, and Janice Schultz and Mr. Johnson for putting that on. Sorry, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Mr. Ziegler.
I'm going to take a personal moment because my wife Patty is usually watching. I'll let you all know about it. A couple months ago, she broke her kneecap, and she's well into physical therapy, doing a great job in recovery. Very proud of her. But most importantly, to say that tonight is because Happy Valentine's, dear. I love you.
All right, brownie points, Mr. Ziegler. Mr. Craig, I think you had a follow-up.
Sorry, just one quick follow-up. I think we have a unique opportunity this week at Merritt Island High School. Both the girls and the boys soccer teams will be playing for the state championship on back-to-back days. Pretty impressive to have both your male and female teams playing at that level, and so best of luck to Merritt Island Soccer.
Very good, thank you. And I have some of the same things that were mentioned, the ABC Awards. Kudos to all involved. Thank you to the board for your good sportsmanship, and Dr. Blackburn as well for getting out there and putting ourselves out there for everyone's amusement, I'll say. Excellent event as always, and we certainly appreciate all of the folks that came together to make that happen. Shout out to Anna Woodbury also from Hoover Middle, who was just with us. On the 26th, she put together a STEM event for all of our middle schoolers at the Florida Solar Energy Center. Great opportunity for our schools to attend, and there was an author there that was speaking to them. They had different kind of breakout sessions, if you will, where they went and learned different things about lagoon health and dolphin research and you name it, and students were super engaged, having a great time, and I know that was a lot of work for her to put together for all of the middle schoolers. So kudos to her. Thanks to Stephanie Archer and Jane Klein and the rest of the team that took part in the community forums for the Choice School in the North area. That was a lot of work, I know, and certainly a lot of data gathering, and facilitated beautifully, and I look forward to seeing the outcome of all of those discussions. Spent lots of time at the science fair, did the Israeli Visitation Day, which was awesome. Had the Art and Algorithms kickoff, which in previous years, the Art and Algorithms Festival has hosted many of our students on field trips. Unfortunately, this year it was scheduled during the hurricane. And so they had to reschedule, and we weren't able to reschedule all of those field trips. But looking forward to getting our students back out there next year. But an awesome event, and certainly a great way to bring the arts to our students and our community. The fourth brought two emotionally conflicting events, I guess you could say. I started my morning with the family at Imperial Estates. They were doing what they called the Valerie Dash to raise money for their bookkeeper, who unfortunately lost her battle this weekend with cancer. But prior to that, they held the dash. She couldn't be there with us, but they were raising money for the family to help with travel and time off and that sort of thing. And I just need to give them a shout out, because so many times we see things like this going on at our schools. It was such an awesome example of family. And I think sometimes we forget that our schools are families. Not only were the teachers and the students and the staff from Imperial there, but Mr. O'Leary was there from Apopka, or Apollo Elementary. So we had support from other schools as well, anyone that had come in contact with her, and it was just, I think, really a great example of how we come together as a community when we need to, not only at the school level, at the district level, you know, within the county, but certainly a great learning opportunity for all of those students, and the importance of sticking together. One of the cutest little girls, she must have been probably a first grader, and she walked up just out of the blue and she said, "I am here because I just want to help Miss Valerie, and then I'm going to the laundromat." And she was just so excited to be able to be there and help. But it was a great time for everyone, and got some exercise along the way as well. Most of us, I think, were at the BASA Scholarship Social. Many thanks to BASA for all they do to support our students and create opportunities for them. It was a great event, well attended, and certainly they'll do a lot of good with those dollars. Rolling Readers. Hopefully all of you are familiar with the Rolling Readers program, and I had the opportunity to attend their volunteer celebration on the 7th, and great turnout there as well. Rolling Readers is turning 20 years old this year. And for those of you not familiar, they have volunteers that go into the schools and read to our students. They also do some tutoring. There are various programs. But the thing that really just made me stop and be in absolute awe, there were 3 individuals that were at the volunteer celebration that have been Rolling Readers volunteers in our schools for 20 years. 20 years they've been going and reading to our kiddos every week. So certainly lots and lots of thanks to them, to the organizers that make that possible, but most certainly to all of the volunteers that give of their time. And this week, I have the opportunity to join several of our district leaders at the Standards Institute over in Orlando, where I am getting to know more about standards than I ever could hope to know. It is certainly giving me a wonderful appreciation for the work that goes on in our classrooms, and the work that goes on at the district to support the teachers in the classrooms and helping them to be successful with the standards. So I appreciate the opportunity to be there. I look forward to lots of dialogue when the event is over as to how we can better support teachers and students in learning in the classroom. And all in all, I am thankful for the work that we get to do as board members. Very, very appreciative. All right, anyone else have anything need to revisit, forgot to throw in there, anything like that? All right. Then, that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mrs. Belford and members of the board, on tonight's agenda, we have 1 administrative staff recommendation, 22 consent items, 1 action item, and 1 information item. You also have the yellow supplemental agenda, which are changes made to the agenda since being released to the public. There is a revision to item A8 on administrative staff recommendation, a revision to consent item F12 on instructional staff recommendations, and a revision to information item H33 on property disposal.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Mr. Craig. Everyone, please vote. I'm sorry, any discussion? Please vote. Dr. Blackburn, will you please let us know about the administrative staff recommendations?
Thank you, Mrs. Belford. On tonight's agenda, there is one administrative staff member for the board to consider.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve. Went off. Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Mr. Craig. Any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Please vote. And the vote passes 5-0.
I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and recognize Sarah Barnett on her reclassification from the position of Teacher on Assignment, Computer Education at Meadow Lane Primary to the position of Assistant Principal at Meadow Lane Primary. And Mr. Matt Reed is going to help us out with giving her the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you, Dr. Blackburn, and all of the board members. I'm truly honored by this appointment, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to serve Brevard Public Schools as an assistant principal. There are several other people I need to thank, because without them, I would not be where I am today. I'd first like to thank my family, my beautiful daughter, Allie, and my husband, Robert, and my parents, who show me constant and unconditional support. I have two special mentors I would like to thank. Miss Janice Rutherford was my assistant principal and is now the principal at Southern Elementary, and also Mrs. Susie Schroeder. I've already learned so much from you, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be your assistant principal and can't wait to work as a team with you. I would also like to thank Dr. Mullins and Ms. Diaz and Ms. Sylvester and Ms. Klein for not only supporting me, but believing in me. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the Meadow Lane family, those of you that are here tonight and those that could not attend tonight. You have already shown me such great support, and I can't wait to start supporting you. I truly do believe that the job of an administrator is to serve and support others, and I will come to work every day as your assistant principal and be the best me that I can be and serve and support you all so that we can work together to do what's best for our kiddos. So with that, I would just like to give a final thank you to the board and Dr. Blackburn and wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day.
Okay, I believe we are now at public comments. The maximum allotted time for each speaker is 3 minutes. Clarification of information presented and answers to questions specific to district business and educational matters will be posted on the school board's website under the section called For the Record. Please be reminded that profane, abusive, or slanderous speech is not permitted. I request that you speak into the microphone and state your name. We have, in order of appearance, Kayla Spellman, Anthony Colucci, Vanessa Skipper, Dan Bennett, and Mr. Hockman. Kayla, if you would approach.
I just want to make sure I'm here at the right time because I want to comment on a consent item. I am. Awesome.
Yes.
It's so good to be in the right place at the right time. My name is Kayla Spellman. I am a parent of children in the Brevard schools. Thank you for your service on behalf of my children. I have many concerns about the proposed capacity plan that you're going to vote on tonight. I'm delighted that we are planning to build a school in Viera. That's very needed. But there are many other aspects of the capacity plan that I don't think are good. I don't support them. And I don't think they're an efficient use of our extremely limited capital funds that we have as a district. I have a lot of questions like, West Melbourne is super crowded and yet we're not prioritizing a school for them. Cocoa Junior Senior High School is very full, but other schools in Central Brevard are not, and we are not approaching that problem with redrawing attendance boundaries before we invest money in building an addition. Why are we building a school of choice in Titusville? I love schools of choice. They are fantastic. They provide amazing curriculum options for our kids, but they're not really the best way to address a purely capacity-based issue. They don't draw from a specific geographic area. They're often not fully utilized because we don't provide busing. And so if our primary concern is addressing those capacity issues, I don't think this is the most efficient way to deal with that. Why are we buying 90 portables? That's like a cry for help. When I saw that, I was like, okay, that's like a giant red flag that we have an issue with addressing capacity in our county. And lastly, I noticed that a very important policy change that has to be made as a part of this capacity plan, or that's intended to be made as a part of this capacity plan, is how you define total capacity or whatever, like how you're defining permanent capacity or total capacity is going to be permanent structures plus portable structures, as opposed to now, where we just use permanent structures to identify what the capacity of a school is. And I think that that would be a mistake to make that change. Because portables are great, they give you incremental capacity, but they're not intended to address a long-term capacity issue. They're expensive to operate and maintain. They don't have the same useful life as a permanent structure. They provide an inferior instructional environment. They're not as secure for weather or in a lockdown situation. And I think that if we make that change, it will be harder for us to identify when a school is exceeding capacity. When you put tons of portables at a school, you overwhelm the parking lot, the car loop, and everything else. And so I really would object to that kind of a change being made to the policy. We have very limited funding. We need a better plan. This is a very important step for us, and it will have ramifications for years to come. And we need to make sure that we are making the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spellman. Anthony Colucci.
My name is Anthony Colucci. I'm the Vice President of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. Tonight I want to start by asking you some questions. First off, when was the last time you were at work and someone decided to bite you? Have you ever been punched or kicked on the job?
Yes.
Were you ever spit on while at work?
Yes.
Other than the sheriff's deputy over there, the answer is probably no. But we've noticed that some of these things, if not all of these things, may be happening on a daily basis to some of our teachers. Based on the calls that we received this year, we believe this is happening to kindergarten teachers more so than any other regular education classroom teacher. We believe this for a couple reasons. For starters, as kids mature and learn school expectations, they seem less likely to engage in these behaviors. Secondly, because these students have been in school for only a short amount of time, they are not yet receiving appropriate services. Schools are still in the process of determining what those services are. And taking the time to figure out students' needs is appropriate and reasonable, because determining the cause of early childhood aggression is complicated. However, I'm asking for something just as appropriate and reasonable. My request is that this board set policies to make sure our kindergarten teachers, or any other teacher for that matter, is not being subjected to physical aggression while schools are in the process of determining the needs of students who are exhibiting these behaviors. And I don't want to hear what can't be done because of federal mandates. I want you to have your team to figure out what can be done. And after those actions are decided, it needs to be clearly communicated to every teacher and administrator in the district. They shouldn't be left figuring out what they can and cannot do, what is legal or illegal. The actions that can be taken should be apparent and available at every school. You know, unfortunately, these aggressive behaviors in our little ones are not likely to disappear anytime soon. Chances are they're going to continue to get worse. We cannot tolerate our teachers being punching bags for out-of-control students while students learn to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colucci. Vanessa Skipper.
Vanessa Skipper, Vice President, Brevard Federation of Teachers. Speak to the Cocoa High issue. Yes, we would love to have a building at Cocoa High School. I watch my students daily run in the rain and then freeze in their classrooms. So the portables, we'd love to see a building there instead of portables. Tonight, I'm glad to see the students from Eastern Florida here, as that's actually what I'm talking to you guys about. I don't know if you saw the news article from Orlando Sentinel. They put up a giant, actually I think 2 giant billboards near the entrance of University of Central Florida that say, "Become a hero, teachers needed." It seems that the amount of students graduating in Florida with education degrees has dropped by 5,000 over the last decade, while enrollment has grown, topping 2.8 million, according to the article by the Orlando Sentinel. UCF, go Knights, is the largest supplier of teacher graduates to the state of Florida. Yet again, according to the article, they supplied 318 fewer interns this year to Orange County. So how do we make sure that we, as Brevard County, do not have to put up giant billboards in the front of institutions advertising, become a hero, teachers needed? And my advice to you all and to Brevard Public Schools is we treat each and every single teacher we currently have as the heroes that they are. We need to do more to recruit and attract teachers. But what happens when they come into the profession? Sure, we could raise the beginning salary, make that more competitive, draw them in, have signing bonuses, but then once they're in the profession, they look and they see teachers like me, sitting with over a decade worth of experience, with a master's degree, making not that much more than they do. So when they're planning for their future and they're looking ahead for their families and they're looking a decade down the road, that 10-year vision of where they intend to be in their profession, and hopefully it's teaching, and hopefully it's constantly growing, and hopefully it's making our district all that it can be. They need to see that it's worth it for them to stay in that profession. So we need to provide competitive salaries. After talking to my colleagues, Anthony and Dan, it seems that there was very good conversation during the budget meeting today. And that is what we need to continue, constantly thinking about budgeting for teacher raises, budgeting for teacher salaries, so that we are competitive at every level, the entry level, the mid-level, and that those teachers that teach day in and day out and they're dedicated to the classroom, and this is the profession that we want to be in because we love our students, that it's competitive. And lastly,
Ms.
we need to
Skipper.
fight for job security for our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Bennett.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Blackburn. Good evening, members of the board. I spent about 3.5 hours watching you all at a budget workshop this afternoon, and now I'm spending time again at a board meeting, and there's really no better way to spend Valentine's Day. And now I begin with the honest part of my presentation, which is to say that I was very encouraged by what I witnessed this afternoon. I've never known this district to be so open, honest, and thoughtful with the budget process. Now, that doesn't mean that you've never been open, honest, and thoughtful with the budget process, or that the people that have sat in your seats before you have not been that way, or that have worked in finance before, but it certainly hasn't been apparent or evidence to the public. What I saw today was an interaction between board members and the finance folks. What I saw today was questioning of what direction do you want to go in, and what I saw was forward thinking, forward planning, which is so desperately needed, at least compared to what's been evident to me for the past decade that I've been watching your finances from afar. You know, every year when we settle the contract, I go back to teachers and I say, well, they did the best. That's if we settle without impasse, which is usually the case. But when I settle and I go to teachers who are disappointed, I say, well, they did the best they could, given the late hour, given Tallahassee, given the problems, they did the best they could. And yet it's always on my mind, it's always on all our minds that, well, what if we had planned sooner? What if we had planned earlier? What if we looked at the realities of Tallahassee, didn't just drop a bunch of gloom and doom into it, What if we actually had an open workshop, set some priorities, and really did the best we could by some forward planning? And I'm encouraged because I saw that process right now. Now, a word of warning. It doesn't mean a guarantee that by the time we're done with this, everyone's going to be happy, because we have veteran teachers in this field that they know what this profession had promised them a long time ago. They feel they know where they should be. And then we have early career teachers that are kind of looking over this profession, deciding if they're satisfied, deciding if they're going to stay a while. And we have to somehow try to satisfy all those people with a very finite set of circumstances that are, of course, controlled by the top. But what I saw today was a board and a district working well together, and there was even some interaction from the union. I don't know if it was welcome, but there was. But there was some interaction from us from the back. You did look back at us a couple times. And it was an open process where we could see what was coming and we could plan for things. There was some admission that there could be some savings captured through certain departments, through recognition of retirements. And I want to encourage that process to go on, because we have a lot of people to try to please and try to keep in this profession. And let's keep that positive momentum going. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Hockman.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Blackburn. First, I come as a parent with a background knowledge as a teacher. The first thing I would like to commend is a couple of things I saw for the priority budget today at the workshop for the gifted program, for more distributed funds and support for that, and also the resource officers in all our schools. So thank you very much for putting that in there, and hopefully that will get approved. Now, the first thing I would like to tell you is a story. About a decade ago, I was an administrator at a separate day school in Titusville. And I was new experience came from the mental health counseling, not much education in the education field or in teaching, to be quite honest. And what I noticed and started seeing is kids coming to us that shouldn't have been coming to us. Meaning they didn't have BIPs. They weren't going to the most least restrictive. There wasn't a step-by-step process. They were just jumping hoops and getting sent to us. So before I left, the summer before I left, I sat down and talked to several parents, several of the counselors, several of the teachers, and said, we need to give these children a chance, an opportunity for success, because BPS lacked responsibility, plain and simple. Now, we pushed them out. Hopefully they would be successful. Some were, some weren't, but it was the opportunity to give them success. Now, relating that to today's time, my wife and myself are extremely, extremely worried, scared, and ticked off about how our students are receiving ESD services in the secondary schools. Some of you know the details. I'm not going to go into all the details because it's embarrassing. It's shameful. And you're putting our teachers and our students at risk. Now, the reason we bring this up is because we care about our son. We want our son to be successful in Brevard Public Schools. We really are thinking about moving within a year and a half, so he doesn't have to be in the schools here. Because we're known in elementary school to work with our students, do the best we can, and get them ready for middle school and secondary school, because they won't get the services they need. That's just a standard taboo, basically. Most of us recognize that. We have to do our best. You can disagree or not, but that's a fact. Now, what I would like to see, two things I've heard are the issues. Principals not doing what they're supposed to do, but also ESS staff not supposed to be doing what they're supposed to do, and taking accountability and responsibility for our students and our teachers. I would like to see a workshop conducted with the principals for once, ESF staff and the school board, and get down to the bottom of the issues and actually problem solve. Not put all the principals on notice or anything of that nature. Some maybe not. Gotta go.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. All right, the board wishes to thank this evening's speakers. Your willingness to speak to the board is appreciated. That moves us to the consent agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
There are 22 agenda items under this category, 5 with prior information.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Mr. Susan?
32.
Yeah, you mean G32?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so that would be the action agenda. Is there anything,
No, I'm sorry.
nothing from consent? Okay, then I will take a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Mr. Susan. Any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Please vote. Vote passes 5-0. We don't need a break, do we? All right, we will move on to the action agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
There is one item for your consideration, item G32 on purchasing solicitations.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Mr. Craig. Discussion? Mr. Susan? Actually, 1 second. Mr. Ziegler, did you have discussion since you motioned? Thank you. Mr. Susan?
I'd like to make sure, Mr. Lingendorf, if you could come up real quick. This was a bone of contention from years ago. This contract, we wanted to make sure that Willis in no way would ever be compensated for any other than the services that they're providing. And it's inside the contract, and I just wanted to make sure that that's the intent of what our contract says, is that whether it's Delta Dental, Aflac, any of them, they're not to receive any commissions in any way from those providers.
Absolutely. Actually, do you want me to read what?
Nope,
we put in?
I already read it,
Okay.
but I just wanted that intent to be in there so that we could always refer to it. And I just want to say thank you, Mr. Langendorf.
Actually, and I'll say something more because Willis said to me today, because when they won the award, they're actually taking a reduction in what they've had in years past by $15,000 to $20,000, and they asked me, what should we do with the commissions that are paid, that have been paid from them from the Aflac products, because those are going to have to start from the contract going back to Aflac. That'll help their profit margin. And they actually suggested if we wanted to, we could reduce our fees even further. Instead of paying $145, we could offset those commissions to reduce that. But by state law, they have to go back to Aflac. So it's a profit situation for Aflac. They just make more money. So they've given us that option.
I think they need to make a donation to the board.
Mr. Ziegler?
I was not aware of that, but, so you're saying that it's...
That just happened today, Mr.
So they're saying retroactively?
No.
Going back?
Going
forward?
Right.
Well, then,
They were.
what I would like to happen is, going forward, since the commissions are on voluntary services, which are services purchased by our employees, I would like to see us negotiate that to reduce premiums for employees. Not back to the board, it's not our money.
Unfortunately, with those products, they cannot be.
Well, then I'd like to figure out how we could benefit employees somehow, because it's their money. So if we can, I don't know what our options are, but I don't know if board members have thoughts, but if we can come up with something, yeah, I don't think it should go back to necessarily to the vendor in a form of profit. But I think it should somehow benefit our employees. I don't know what that looks like, but if we can brainstorm on that and
Sure, I can
see if
provide
there's
you
something
with-
creative, that's what I would like to see happen. Any objections from the board on trying to somehow help the employees out, since it was their money, if it's possible?
I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Craig?
The only thing I would say on that is that, these are voluntary products that are offered by for-profit companies, and that's kind of the whole basis of the free market system. So if we don't want to offer them, that's one thing. If we want to offer them, we can't tell them that they can't profit off of what they're offering unless we as a board are going to supplement it.
They're profiting. These are broker commissions.
I understand that.
There's no broker involved. So I guess because they were currently paying a commission to a broker, this agreement nullifies that. So they would then stop paying the commission to the broker increases their profits. It's not taking profits away from the vendor. So in the case of Aflac, it's not taking profit away from Aflac, it's increasing profit.
My point is that that's not our place. We don't own that process. If we want to get in the business of offering that as an internal insurance, and decide to go down that road, and that's one thing, but it's not the
Well,
government's job to tell a publicly held company how they can do business.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the vendor to just have increased profits, that's okay too. I would like to see lower premiums if there's some way to do that, but apparently not.
Yeah,
I don't want the money. I don't want the money.
I agree
for
with you.
us.
I agree with you.
I think Mr. Langdorf has input.
Just to give you an idea of what happens, we're talking just about the products offered through Aflac. And Aflac, as an admitted carrier, has to report their pricing to the Office of Insurance Regulation for all of the products, not just for Brevard. They don't segregate based on the entity, so it's all products are posted. They also have to list the commissions that they will pay brokers. So that is firm. They cannot change that rate. They cannot reduce their policies because those are set by state standards, and the Office of Insurance Regulation records that, and they can't allow reductions at all because that would be rebating. What Willis has said they would do today is, rather than give that back to Aflac and increase their profit margin, they would reduce the $145,000 per year by whatever those commissions turn out to be. So instead of us paying $145,
But that means that we're taking
pay
it to reduce
$130, maybe
our
$125,
expenses.
which was an offer that they gave this afternoon. And honestly, I think it's a good thing to consider because that benefits all of our plans because it reduces what we would pay for their services. And it's not a cost to us, and really it's built into the pricing for the employees for those voluntary products that cannot be reduced.
I guess technically what that would do is would revert into additional funds into our insurance trust fund, which then goes to pay employee claims.
Exactly.
So I guess that would accomplish the
I think
same
that
thing because it's
probably-
still used to benefit our employees.
Yeah.
I guess right now that sounds okay, but I'll mull it over. It's not like, I don't know if it's that we have to give a directive on that because it's not part of the contract. So
They offered that today.
that's awfully nice of them to
Yes, I thought
to
it was
do
a great
that.
offer.
All right, thank you. Well, good.
I say one more thing.
Another success. Great.
Congratulations, Willis. You guys have been great for us throughout the district. You guys have been, guiding the ship through the waters for a long time. You guys had the switch over with Mike Meredith and them. Thank you. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Call the question.
Move to approve G32.
That's
Second.
already been. moved
Already
and
been,
seconded.
yep, just need to,
a vote.
just
Oh.
need to make
I'm
the
sorry.
vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
All right, vote passes 5-0. We will move on to the information agenda, which includes items for board review and will be brought back for action at a subsequent meeting. No action will be taken on these items tonight. Dr. Blackburn.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Belford, there is only one item under the information category.
Does any member wish to discuss the item?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We are now at the board member reports and discussion point section. In addition to discussion points, I request that board members please include any information requests to be placed on board assigned tasks during this time as well. Ms. Duskovich, you asked to address the cell phone contract for students.
I did. As I've been visiting the secondary schools within my district, it's come to my attention that our policy, I don't know, lack of a better word, outdated. It's not meeting the needs, in my opinion, of our schools. And that's coming from our principals. We have, at least within my district, I have some schools that are not following it at all. And I have some schools that are selectively following it. and other schools that are following it and wish they weren't, but they feel bound by it because they want to do the right thing and follow the policy that we set. So I just wanted us to take an opportunity to, I emailed it to all of you to look over, to read, and I had a discussion with Dr. Theddy and Mr. Russell, I can't think of your last name for some reason, and they have some ideas of what we can do with it if you all are interested in taking a look at it.
Very good, Dr. Theddy and Mr. Russell, as you are newly named, would you like to approach the podium, please?
Mr. Cheatham and I have looked through the policy, and we've looked at the cell phone contract, and Dr. Sullivan has polled the secondary principals, and we believe there's some areas in the policy that do provide for some of the flexibility that schools are wishing to have. But we'd like an opportunity to have a little more dialogue with principals, especially elementary as well, because we have not polled elementary principals to get some feedback.
Any specific questions from the board for staff?
Dr. Theddy, when we talked on the phone, you, I mean, she mentioned polling, which I thought was a great idea, getting an actual response from our principals other than me telling you what I think I heard. I just want to say that my concerns are, our policy states that they have to turn it off completely, and this is in high school, that they're not even allowed to pull it out at lunch or between classes, and like I said, some schools are allowing that, and we need to decide one way or another if we think that is appropriate or not appropriate. So I just look forward to seeing the results from what the schools have to say. And you had given me a couple options, or you said there would be options out there of policies that are already out there that we can pull from, where we could, can you?
We looked at the suggested Neola policy, and there are some options within that policy. What I'd like the opportunity to do is develop a focus group of principals that can help determine what the best course of practice is to bring a recommendation back to you.
Okay.
And Ms. Deskovich, as the policy stands right now, there is some wiggle room in the language for interpretation at the school level. Not carte blanche wiggle room, but I think enough to address the issue right now, today, tomorrow, until Dr. Theddy and Mr. Cheatham can reach out to schools and get some information back to us, at which point in time we can have a discussion along the lines of, you know, the policy decisions that we discussed at the workshop that we need to start making. So I think that will give us some good options once we have input from our principals.
I felt like there was a little wiggle room, but one of the principals specifically that is enforcing the policy merely because he feels like he has to, they are sending around people during lunch hour with boxes to collect phones if kids pull them out, because he highlighted in the policy, and I do not see where that is right off the top of my head, but it pretty much summarized that you had to report if you saw someone with it on during lunch or in between classes, and he felt like that was binding them to having to report. So I told him we were going to discuss it tonight, and Dr. Blackburn told me personally to give the guy, he has a little wiggle room, but I don't think he feels that way until the policies change. So just wanted to.
Well, and I thank him for following our policy so diligently. If only we had that problem all the time, right? But I certainly understand the concern there and appreciate you bringing it forward, Dr. Theddy.
I think part of the confusion and concern on the part of that principal is the contract, the cell phone contract. And the policy does provide a little bit of wiggle room, but the cell phone contract itself does not. So that's something we need to look at.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is one other item that I had asked to have on discussion, and I just am going to revisit it because we said we would, and so I feel like it's important to do so, and that is on the master board training. We had discussed at the last meeting whether or not we wanted to pursue master board certification through FSBA. The discussion at that point was that we would each look into different options so that we could really weigh our options and make a determination. And so just wanted to give the opportunity for anyone to weigh in that had done some research on that. I did do some research, found some organizations that do some board professional development, but none of them specific to education. and none of them familiar with sunshine laws and that sort of thing. So I don't have a recommendation for an alternative. Does anyone else? So do we have an appetite for making a decision on going with FSBA? Do we want to postpone until next year for consideration? What are the thoughts of my peers?
If
Mr. Ziegler.
I may, since I spoke so highly of Master Board, which I still do, having been through a retreat with you, I'm not sure that we're going to learn a whole lot more than the current path of our own self-development and collaboration that we're working on. While a valuable tool, I think there's a pretty cohesive, collaborative team. I'm not sure that we're going to glean that much out of it that we need to do it, to be honest with you.
So I think I heard accolades for your facilitators there. Is that what I heard?
That's what you heard.
Any input from any other board members? Mr. Craig?
Thank you for saying that, Mr. Ziegler, because I would agree with you. I went back and forth on this, and I know you spoke so highly of the Master Board training, and I have no doubt that it's extremely good training, but I would say the same thing. I kind of wanted to see how we came away from the last couple weeks and what the feeling was with the whole team together, especially after the last retreat with the cabinet as well. And I think you're spot on. I think we are moving in the right direction. I think we have so many other things. We have a great foundation, and now we've got all these workshops and discussion points that we're moving forward with. I think our time is better spent, and our resources are probably better spent at this point.
Agreed.
So thank you.
Mr. Susan, did you want to comment?
Not on this.
Okay. All right. Then we will put that aside for now and not worry about it. That brings us to board member reports. Anyone that you haven't already covered? Mr. Ziegler?
Yesterday, be nice if this didn't time out all the time. Yesterday was the Central Florida Public School Board Coalition monthly meeting. An interesting presentation and conversation we had, and I'm not sure if I sent you this or not. There was a evaluation, or say a study done by Orange County Public Schools on performance pay for teachers with respect to increased performance of students, done over a course of 3 years, which basically had no real conclusive evidence that that model helped improve student performance enough to hang your hat on that was the right thing to do. It was, they said maybe in smaller environments it may work, but it appears there's no evidence. And so I think we're on the right track with looking at our evaluations and how they're done and what we can do to help our employees. Unfortunately, performance pay is a way of life as dictated by the state. But I think the way we evaluate our teachers can be improved. Obviously, there's some tweaks we want to make and see what we can do to make their life easier and more accurately evaluate what they do, because obviously there's a lot of inequities, in my opinion, to evaluating a teacher based on a student's performance, because I guess as I put it in that conversation was, in the real world, in the business world, there's a defined job description, and the employee usually has autonomy to get that job done. In our world, it seems like every time we turn a corner, our staff's hands are tied by statutes and things that are beyond their control, yet we want to evaluate their outcome based on that. And I think we need to start looking at how well they're performing, not how well statutes say we should measure them. So it was a very interesting survey. I did send that to you all, didn't I? Okay. And just that's what I want to report.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Mr. Susan?
As we move forward towards the boundary changes and stuff and new construction for schools, I've been doing a lot of research as far as, use of portables and achievement and stuff like that. And what keeps coming out is that the use of portables does not directly affect the use of achievement, right? So that's the scientific journals. when I taught at Space Coast, we had 35 portables. We had Portable City. And I will tell you, regardless of research, I felt it's not good practice to do. And the sentiments of Ms. Spellman and everybody in the back, I'm right there with you. As we move forward, we readdress these issues every year, and we'll be looking to minimize the use of portables through boundary changes and the new construction of schools. I know it's been a hot contended item for us, and I'm right there with you. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Susan. Mr. Craig, and then Ms. Deskovich.
Mr. Susan, thank you for mentioning that. In a related way, I would also like to thank Dr. Blackburn and Dane Theodore and his team. This capacity plan has been going on for quite some time, and we've had extremely lengthy discussions. And I feel that, Dr. Blackburn, you have done the exact thing you said you were going to do when you came here, and you went out and you listened to the community, and we put together the absolute best plan that we think satisfies not only that, but the capacity requirements and issues. Is there a single solution that's going to be perfect for everyone? No, there isn't. And even if we had every resource in the world, we still might not be able to do that for a variety of reasons. But I just want to make sure that yes, I agree with you. Portables, it's not something that we want to do on a regular basis, but it is certainly a way to mitigate as we continue to grow our impact fee funding so that we don't have to take on additional debt, we don't add to our debt servicing, all the things that cascade from that. We heard loud and clear from the community that was not an appetite that they have. And so we need to make sure that we provide the best learning environment that we can, utilizing the best the assets that we have, and then saving for the future. And I think we're doing exactly that. So I appreciate the leadership that you put and the effort that you put into it, Dane. Mr. Theodore, you guys, I know, worked every solutions and looked in nooks and crannies on how to minimize impact and brought us truly several solutions. So I thank you, because that's a refreshing way of doing business here, is getting several solutions and collaborating to find the best solution that makes sure we serve every child with excellence. And I know that was the point that we looked to every time we discussed this for the last year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Ms. Deskovich.
Just wanted to address a couple of the comments that were made during public comments, and with Ms. Skipper, to let her know that we have spoken both in our retreat and even earlier today during the budget workshop about recruiting and attracting teachers. So, Ms. Skipper, your concerns are being addressed by us and by staff. I know that Human Resources and Dr. Kent are working hard to come up with creative ideas, and we are all behind her and want to support that initiative. For Mr. Colucci, I had that exact conversation today with Dr. Theddy. Your concerns for your teachers, we hear that also, and I hope that we will address that, and I hope that you can address her directly too. We do not want our teachers being abused, even by 5-year-olds. And just to reiterate what Mr. Craig said, I support the capital plan. One of the main reasons is because we did not want to take on additional debt. Mr. Theodore had to find different plans and different routes to take on debt. The debt just hurts us long term. We're not able to do programs now that we want to do as a board because we have debt service we have to pay on, and so we had to find a solution without going into debt. So portables are not ideal, but it's what we were left with. So thank you for understanding, and those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Deskovich. Anyone else? All right, Dr. Blackburn, do you have a superintendent's report?
I do, thank you. A few things, several of them have already been mentioned, so I won't be repetitive, but I just want to provide a sincere level of appreciation to 1010, BFT, and BASA on the collaborative process that we are creating. Many of you may know that most recently we're working on what, if any, changes we can make to the PGP process and to evaluation to try to give our educators in schools and classrooms more time to spend on teaching and less time spent on unneeded documentation and or any other divisive processes out there. So working hard, checking logistics, checking legalities, and we hope to have some final recommendations to come to the board here really soon. So thank you to those 3 labor groups. I think we're on this Friday, right? Maybe not. Okay. Thank you to outgoing county manager Stockton Witten and the entire county government over there for a phenomenal Black History Month celebration last Friday, which was attended by many people. I may be biased in saying this, but there was a phenomenal keynote speaker there as well. The Florida Department of Education has identified the quote-unquote highest impact teachers throughout the state based on their former students' performance on assessments in VAM. Of those recognized, 333 were from Brevard. Matt Reed, Assistant Superintendent of Government and Community Relations, plans to showcase the identified teachers in an upcoming publication. Look forward to seeing that. Several board members mentioned it. I'd be remiss if I didn't personally acknowledge the work of Mr. Theodore and his staff in driving the collaborative train on creating a capital plan and capacity options. About a year and a half ago, these topics were largely divisive here in our community, and I believe the plan that the board approved tonight gets everything done in an equitable way across the system. It isn't the best plan, which has been acknowledged, but we are trying to be conservative in how we manage our finances. So, and we're trying to be transparent and collaborative with all facets of the community, and I think that happened. Similarly, I'd like to thank Mrs. Zucker and the budget staff for all of the work that went into what really amounts to a first step this afternoon in transparency, openness, and prioritization for the years to come around our resources. So definitely looking forward to what the future holds there. Tough work, because no matter how you slice it, we do not have enough for every initiative, every priority, but to the extent that this community can rally around a consensus on priorities, I think that will yield huge benefits. And last but not least, it was discussed earlier, but under Dr. Kent's leadership, in our determination to bolster our recruiting efforts this year, Human Resources has created an ambassador program to help recruit and bring teachers to the district. So over 70 people applied to this program, and 43 teachers, assistant principals, and directors were highly recommended to be the face of Brevard at our recruiting events this year. Human Resources conducted 2 trainings for our ambassadors to ensure consistency in how we interview and select candidates for all of our schools. Our ambassadors will be attending more than 25 colleges and universities during this recruiting season, inside and outside of the state of Florida. I know that Dr. Ken and her staff, they are also targeting certain areas in the country that are now have highly skilled teachers, but maybe reducing the teacher force in those areas. So she's been targeting that as well. We're thrilled with this initiative to attract highly talented and passionate teachers, more highly talented and more passionate teachers to Brevard Public Schools to enhance our pool of candidates with excellence as the standard. That's my report.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Anything from any of my fellow board members before we call it a happy Valentine's night? All right, there being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.